Introduction. You tend to give in easily to temptation. By understanding how your brain regulates your actions in the face of temptation, you will be able to improve it to avoid giving in easily. In this book, you will learn: where does the marshmallow test come from? How is willpower developed? What shapes our willpower? How is our willpower influenced by context? What is the impact of the marshmallow test result in adulthood? How do you teach willpower to a child? How can I exercise my willpower on a daily basis? Our answers to these questions are easy to understand, simple to implement, and quick to execute. Ready to be more resistant to temptation? Let's go. Where does the marshmallow test come from? The marshmallow test was designed to understand how children control their urges. In this test, children were asked to choose their favorite treat, and then the researcher told them they could either eat the treat now or eat too later when the researcher came back into the room. Some children ate the treat right away, others waited a bit before eating it, and still others were able to resist the treat. All children who successfully resisted the treat used the same distraction strategy, such as singing a song or rocking back and forth in their chairs. In a second phase, when the experiment was repeated with new children, the researcher this time explained the distraction strategies to the children so that they could more easily resist the temptation. The distraction strategy consisted of an if-then plan. For example, if my hand moves to the marshmallow, I sing a song. With this strategy, children can more easily wait for the seeker to return. How does the will develop? Our will depends on two systems that work in our body: one that reacts to our environment and one that controls our behavior. Our emotions and biological needs are regulated by the limbic system, also called the hot system. It reacts immediately to any exciting stimulus. Thus, when a child sees a marshmallow, his system makes him want to eat it immediately. On the other hand, our decision-making or planning is regulated by the prefrontal cortex, called the cold system. It is responsible for our willpower and helps cool our hot system. When children use a distraction strategy, it draws on this cold system and cools the hot system. Throughout childhood, the cold system develops. This is why it is more difficult for a child to resist a temptation than for an adult. Under the age of 4, they are usually not able to use the cold system, and even in adolescence, the cold system continues to develop. What shapes our willpower? Willpower is not innate. Of course, there is a genetic component, but it can be worked on as a skill. For example, you may perceive yourself as stupid. If your environment is surrounded by intelligent people, you will have the will to become more intelligent, and vice versa. During childhood, the role of parents is essential for learning willpower. For example, if your child is crying, give him a fun toy to distract him. This way, the child will internalize this method of distraction later. This is why it is important to interact with your child. How is our will influenced by context? When we decide to give in to temptation, we consider the consequences, the goals, and the strength of the temptation itself. And depending on the situation, our willpower will be different. For example, a person may have great self-control at work but not be able to control their sexual urges. So it's all a matter of belief. To increase your willpower, consider your willpower as unlimited to avoid feelings of exhaustion or boredom. What is the impact of the marshmallow test result in adulthood? In follow-up studies, researchers found that children who successfully waited longer for their treats were considered more successful later in life. In other words, they had better concentration, were more attentive to detail, and were better at planning. They also performed better in school and were better at maintaining personal relationships. Conversely, children who gave in to temptation during the test had a greater susceptibility to addictive substances as adults and were more likely to be addicted to them. How do you teach a child to be strong-willed? Parents need to find the balance between being there for their child and giving them a sense of autonomy. Children need to understand that the choices they make have consequences. If they make good choices, they will have good outcomes, and vice versa. For example, have them take piano lessons and show them that with regular practice they can play songs on their own. In addition, parents should praise their child when they work hard and let them know that mistakes can happen and that it's okay. For example, if the child feels like giving up because he or she thinks he or she is going to fail, parents should encourage the child to still try to do his or her best. In addition to parents, teachers have a huge impact on this type of development. Television programs for children can also teach them to make good choices on their own. How can I exercise my willpower on a daily basis? Exercising willpower requires putting distance between yourself and temptation. This distance can be temporal, by focusing on the long-term consequences of your behavior, rather than the immediate gratification. The distance can also be physical. For example, if you want to quit smoking when you feel like it, imagine how you will feel when your doctor tells you that you have lung cancer. Suddenly, smoking will seem less appealing. Similarly, analyze yourself and identify the exact moment when you will be most tempted, and then use the if-then plans. For example, if you want to eat chocolate, take a deep breath for 10 seconds and eat a plain yogurt. Conclusion: our willpower is developed in childhood and continues to be determined into adulthood based on our environment. Therefore, everyone can work on their willpower by focusing on their future and using distraction strategies. If you like the summary, click on one of our partner links to discover the Marshmallow Test, Mastering Self-Control by Walter Mischel in ebook, book or audiobook format. And if you're not interested in reading further, we recommend you discover the Willpower Instinct, How Self-Control Works, Why It Matters, and What You Can Do to Get More of It by Kelly McGonigal, Ph.D. Introduction. How can you better control your temptations? One way to solve this problem is to work on your willpower. In this book, you will learn: what does willpower look like? How to avoid temptation? What interferes with your willpower? How to strengthen your willpower? How can your brain trick your willpower? How can our desire get out of control? How does stress affect your willpower? How can you develop a long-term vision? How can you make an object less desirable? How can your environment affect your willpower? Our answers to these questions are easy to understand, simple to implement, and quick to execute. Ready to take better control of your temptations? Let's go.